Assalamu alaikum and a very warm welcome to the show tonight. Let's just take a look at our top stories. Proposal to form Parliamentary Forum on Palestine, Kashmir and Rohingya. Afghan peace process gets underway. Is there hope for peace in Afghanistan? Pakistan frees Indian national Hamid Ansari. Another gesture by Pakistan. Will India reciprocate? Our top story tonight is a proposal to form a parliamentary forum for Palestine, Kashmir and Rohingya. This proposal came from Senator Moshahid Hussain, who is a senior leader of PMLN, and he announced formation of this parliamentary forum on Palestine, Kashmir and Rohingya to promote their causes and protect them from the tyranny of their brutal occupational forces. Senator Hussain was leading the Senate delegation to Global Palestine Solidarity Conference, and he also chairs the Senate Foreign Affairs Committee. He made this announcement during his address to the parliamentarians for Al-Quds Global Conference in Istanbul, which was attended by 74 countries. He also invited these parliamentarians for Al-Quds to visit Pakistan in the first quarter of 2019. Now let's just take a look as to what's been happening with these three issues and why are they important. 1.1 million Rohingya people, who are considered as the most persecuted people in the world, live in Myanmar. Similarly, persecution of Palestinians continue at the hands of Israeli forces, which require immediate attention. Moreover, Kashmir, the bone of contention between India and Pakistan, is also experiencing a fresh wave of freedom struggle. These three issues are at the heart of Muslim world and its sentiments. Prime Minister Imran Khan has highlighted the issue of Kashmir also in his recent tweet by reassuring Pakistan's moral support to the demands of people of Kashmir. Now, to discuss this proposal, we are now joined by Mr. Moshahid Hussain Sayyed. He is a senator. He also heads the Senate Committee on Foreign Affairs. Moshahid Hussain Sayyed Saab, thank you so much for your time. Moshahid Saab, let's just talk about this proposal first. What is the context for this proposal of a parliamentary forum on Kashmir, Palestine and Rohingya?
Let me just very briefly give you the context for this proposal. On 14th of November, the Senate Foreign Affairs Committee held a comprehensive meeting with Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi, Foreign Secretary Temina Janjua and their Foreign Office team in the Parliament. We had 2.5 hours of interaction, and it was there where I proposed that we should globalize and internationalize the Kashmir question, because there is not of impact of Kashmir, and the Indian repression is increasing and the resistance is also increasing. Then secondly, I had a hearing on 13th of December in Islamabad, the public hearing on Kashmir, and I invited a delegation of the Kashmiri American Council from Washington DC, Dr. Imtiaz Khan, the president of the Kashmiri American Council. I also invited Dr. Shirin Mazari, the Minister for Human Rights, and Ms. Nazim Zara for their input. And now this weekend I was in Istanbul for the Global Palestine Solidarity Conference, where I proposed what I call the PKR initiative. Palestine, Kashmir and Rohingya, the issues of three oppressed peoples, which is becoming worse with each increasing day. I had suggested that we should form a parliamentarian forum in Pakistan's parliament to express solidarity and to take these issues forward, because these issues have a common basis. They are victims of injustice, they are victims of state terrorism, and on the issue of Palestine and Kashmir, there are very clearly long-standing UN resolutions which remain to be fulfilled. So the time has come for Parliament to speak up on that, and when parliamentarians speak, they speak the voice not just of their own persons, but of the people they represent. So this was very well received.
But Mr. Hussain, what will be the diplomatic scope for this parliamentary forum?
It should be very clear that Pakistan from day one has been committed to the Palestine cause, from the days of the Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, even from the creation of Pakistan. And you know, Pakistan feels strongly about Palestine because the two issues, Kashmir and Palestine, are inextricably intertwined as victims of injustice, and where denial of the right of self-determination is there, since there are UN resolutions on Palestine and Kashmir. We are of course willing to play that role, provided the injustice ends, the state terrorism of Israel ceases in Palestine, and also this issue of Jerusalem is very important. For Muslims, it's Qibla Awal. and also it's holy city, holy to the three religions of Islam, Christianity and Judaism. So Israeli occupation is illegal and a violation of the UN Charter, just as Indian occupation of Kashmir is illegal and a violation of the UN resolutions. So we have to take a stand which is concurrent and which is consistent.
And there has been some ideas, out-of-box ideas for Kashmir as well. We have seen Human Rights Minister Rehman Azhar talking about Ireland model as well. Do you think that these out-of-box ideas can work in case of Kashmir or the resolution of the conflict?
Yes, I think that we should be constantly looking at ideas, because one thing should be there. The foundation of a stand is the United Nations resolutions seeking a plebiscite and the self-determination of the people of Kashmir. And in that context, two important developments are noteworthy. Number one, the United Nations Human Rights Council's report on Kashmir validates Pakistan's position, followed by the all-parties parliamentary group on Kashmir and the UK House of Commons report of 30th October also validates that. So Kashmir issue is being internationalized at the human rights level. So we have to take this forward, and that's what I suggested to Shah Mahmood Qureshi Saab. And I think Dr. Rehman Azhar has a valid point, because the time has come that we have to take proactive initiatives. One of our ideas was also, apart from this Irish model, which requires, of course, international mediation, because this was done by Senator Mitchell of the US in the case of Ireland, and he brokered a peace agreement. There is also the issue of role of women in conflict zones, women as a victim of war. And that is something which needs to be highlighted consistently, and which she also focused on. So I think all these ideas should be on the table, because 2019 should be the year of internationalization of Kashmir, and we should all work together, whether it's the government, the political parties, the parliament. This is an issue above party lines. This is an issue about the people of Kashmir. It's an issue about Pakistan's future and South Asia's future.
But Senator Sen, one of the issues has been the attitude of Indian leadership. Now this is very important. Do you think that Indian leadership can come to table to talk about Kashmir?
Of course it can. If the Americans can talk in the case of Vietnam, and in the case of Afghanistan today with the Afghan Taliban, if the Russians can talk to the Afghan Mujahideen, I mean, the Indians are not exempt from the inexorable course of history. Let's compare Pakistan's attitude on Kartarpur. We open up borders for the Sikh community with an open heart. We welcome them. And look at the Indian attitude on Kashmir. Kashmir and Kartarpur, the comparison is clear. They are killing people, they are raping women, and they have dismissed even the assembly of Kashmir, and they've imposed governance rule, and they are talking of Hinduization of Kashmir. So I think the contrast between Kartarpur, our attitude, and their view, their role on Kashmir should be presented, and I think we should take this battle of ideas, this diplomacy, the media battle, to the world capitals, whether it's Geneva and the United Nations Human Rights Council, whether it's the UK House of Commons or the American Congress, and the international community. The time has come that Kashmiri people should be put first, because humanity is at stake.
Now, another important issue has been that India has always linked Kashmir with terrorism. Do you think that the Indian government, or should we expect that Indian government can change its policy towards what's going on in Kashmir, or what they think of it?
Well, I think let's see the ground situation, and let's see the pattern of developments. America used to say there is terrorism in Afghanistan. They declared Gulbuddin Hekmatyar as a terrorist. They declared the Afghan Taliban as a terrorist. Today they are sitting across the table and talking to them. And Gulbuddin Hekmatyar is now an accepted part of the Afghan political establishment, accepted and recognized even by the Americans. If the Americans can change policy based on the ground realities, why can't the Indians? And the Indians know that they have tried all the bullets, the bombs and the bayonets, but they have failed to browbeat the Kashmiri people, who are resisting in a widespread indigenous popular and indigenous uprising. So let's be very clear of the facts, and I think that if we remain on message and we push this process forward, I think that we can see some light at the end of the tunnel.
And Senator Hussain, how do you see the international players in these conflicts? What we saw in case of Afghanistan is that all these international players are there and they're playing their role to initiate peace process in Afghanistan. Do you think that they can do that, do the same in case of Kashmir, Palestine, or Rohingya? And also, how can Pakistan make a case internationally for Kashmiri people?
I think it's possible and doable, because as long as we have a multi-pronged, out-of-the-box creative initiative on a sustained basis, and where we link the issue of Kashmir with the larger issue of peace, security and stability in South Asia, which is 1/5 of humanity. And also, let's not forget, if you're talking of peace in Kabul, you have to talk of peace in Kashmir also, because this issue of peace and security in South Asia cannot be compartmentalized or segment, that Kashmir continues to burn while we talk of peace in Kabul. So I think we're talking of a comprehensive peace where all the stakeholders play their role, and Pakistan has to take the lead in pushing it forward along with other countries. And now I think the conscience of the international community is finally waking up. If the UN Human Rights Council is an example, if the House of Commons is an example, and I was recently in Strasbourg and Brussels, the European Parliament is also waking up to this issue. So I think we should take the momentum forward in 2019, and that is what I proposed to the Foreign Minister, Mr. Shah Mahmood Qureshi, during our meeting on November 14th in the Parliament as Chairman of the Senate Foreign Affairs Committee. And the Parliamentary Forum on Palestine, Kashmir and Rohingya would be a major step forward to take the Kashmir cause and the Palestine cause and the cause of the Rohingya forward.
Senator Moshahid Hussain, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure talking to you. That was Senator Moshahid Hussain talking about his proposal to form a parliamentary forum on Kashmir, Palestine and Rohingya. We are going to take a break now. When we come back after the break, we will talk about Afghan peace process and what's happening with it after this break. Welcome back after the break. Our next story tonight is about Afghan peace process. Afghanistan is once again on the front pages of international news as long-awaited peace talks get underway. Pakistan made a mark diplomatically with its facilitation of peace process to bring Taliban to table for these talks. Recent few weeks were indeed very important for Pakistan on the diplomatic front as Pakistan and US made high-level contacts to get these talks started. Let's just take a look at the background of these talks. Pakistan and US have been blowing hot and cold over Afghanistan recently. It all started with President Trump's statement on Pakistan in a Fox News interview. Trump blamed Pakistan for not doing a damn thing for US. It initiated a series of diplomacy between Prime Minister Imran Khan and President Trump. Then in a surprise move, President Donald Trump sent a letter to Prime Minister Imran Khan seeking Pakistan's assistance in Afghan peace talks. Importantly, before assuming government, politics of Imran Khan revolved around his demand of finding a peaceful solution to Afghan conflict. Prime Minister Imran Khan said in his recent address in KP that Pakistan would sponsor the UAE talks. Moreover, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi recently visited Kabul and emphasized that peaceful solution is the only solution to the problems faced by Afghanistan. Prime Minister Imran Khan also tweeted recently and hoped that these talks would bring the long-awaited peace in Afghanistan. What are Pakistan's stakes in these talks, prospects of the ongoing peace process, and how these talks can impact the regional stability? To discuss this, we are now joined by General Retired Ejaz Awan, who is a renowned security expert. General Saab, thank you so much for your time. General Saab, let's just start with these talks. What prospects do you see of these talks that are taking place for Afghanistan right now?
Well, I think we must keep our fingers crossed, and I am at least pinning hopes on the initiative that has been started at Doha, that is Zalmay Khalilzad initiative. Now the question is that because main stakeholders are the resistance forces, United States of America, the government of Afghanistan, and in a way, indirectly, Pakistan, who is trying to support this process of dialogue. So I think I'm quite hopeful that there is going to be some solution out of it, because America is now desperate in finding a solution because they cannot stay on indefinitely and they are not meeting any success, and they have realized one thing, that we have to look for a political solution of this Afghan situation. And second, there is a lot of pressure on the Americans with regards to human rights violation in Afghanistan. And as Prime Minister Imran Khan has already tweeted today, well, I feel the sufferings of the people of Afghanistan must come to an end.
Right, General Wan, but like you said, that US is desperate to get out of Afghanistan at the moment, and they have incentives to do that, to do these talks. But what incentive do Taliban have for these talks? Why would they come to table and negotiate something like that? Because they've been in control of their areas, they've been controlling their territory well, and they've been on the offense as far as the conflict in Afghanistan is concerned.
Well, I think once they have agreed to participate in a Doha initiative, they are engaged in a dialogue from a position of strength, and if not strength, at least parity. So Taliban are not entering into dialogue from a position of weakness. So that gives them hope. Second, they have put up three conditions. One is that the next general election should be delayed, and Afghan Election Commission must postpone the election for at least 3 to 6 months, for which I think the Afghan Election Commission has agreed. They wish to participate in free and fair elections, and they are expecting that they'll be able to return and form the government. So once this condition has been accepted, their prisoners are being released. Direct dialogue is taking place between Afghan and the American forces or Zalmay Khalilzad. The fourth condition that they have put up is American withdrawal, for which America is not saying that we will not withdraw. That is the point where there is a bit of dialogue needed, and maybe both the sides have to show some flexibility. So they are asking them to withdraw immediately, whereas America wants a face saving and they want a graduated withdrawal. First of all, they are demanding that they wish to stay for some time. So I think a middle course would be found, and I think they would agree for a graduated withdrawal in a period of 2 years, that is before the general elections of United States of America, next general election.
Right, and General Awan, there has been a long-standing policy by both US and Afghanistan of accusing Pakistan for its troubles in Afghanistan. How do you see to that? Do you think that this blame game that's been going on in the region for quite some time and everything being put on Pakistan, this will come to an end with this?
Well, this has been very unfortunate that America was trying to externalize its failure and trying to blame Pakistan for their failure in Afghanistan. But I think now the world knows, Americans, they realize, and everyone realizes that it's not America, because they have to accept one thing, and all wise people, they realize that when Afghan resistance forces are controlling 55% of the area of Afghanistan, they don't need sanctuaries abroad. They can have sanctuaries within 55% of the landmass of Afghanistan and yet operate against American forces. So this has been just a rhetoric and trying to put pressure on Pakistan. But once the Pakistan government and Pakistan army, they have made it very clear that no more. We have no sanctuaries, and if you have any information, come sit with us. Even the army chief asked the American representative that, sit, I provide you the helicopter, take me to the area where there are sanctuaries and we'll carry out an operation. So there are no sanctuaries in Pakistan which are being utilized by the Taliban. So once this realization is there and Pakistan has released Mullah brother from Quetta, so I think there is a hope, and Pakistan is cooperating. Pakistan wants peace in the area, region wants peace in Afghanistan. So I'm quite hopeful that maybe this dialogue may succeed.
Right, and General Awan, Afghan leadership, the political leadership has given mixed signals about these talks. They seem hopeful, but there has been a lot of skepticism as well. Do you think now that these talks are underway, that Afghan leadership, the political leadership, will come to terms with it?
I personally feel that since they have not met any success, and the resistance forces in Afghanistan, they do not consider the Ashraf Ghani government as a legitimate representative of the people of Afghanistan. And they also realize that they have not been able to convey to the Americans, their armed forces have not been able to control the area, they have not met any success, so they have to realize, and the next general elections are due. So I think Americans are also desperate, because President Donald Trump was of the mind when he initially got elected during his election campaign, he had been calling it the most purposeless and useless war of America, which is the longest in terms of time, and he promised to pull out of this war. So I think maybe before next general election, President Donald Trump would like to pull out, and that gives me a hope that this dialogue may succeed.
Right. Thank you so much, General Retired Ejaz Awan. That was General Retired Ejaz Awan talking about the ongoing peace process in Afghanistan. He seemed quite hopeful. Now we are going to take a break. When we come back after the break, we will talk about another gesture by Pakistan, and Pakistan has freed an Indian national, Hamid Ansari. How these Pakistani gestures are being received in India, we will talk about this after this break. Welcome back after the break. Our last story tonight is about an Indian national being freed by Pakistan. Pakistan has freed an Indian national accused of spying and forging documents and handed him over to the Indian authorities at Wagah border. On Saturday, Hamid Ansari completed his sentence in Mardan jail. On Monday, the Foreign Office spokesperson Dr. Faisal had announced the repatriation of Hamid Ansari. This step is being hailed as another positive gesture of Pakistan for normalization of bilateral relations with India. Now, let's just take a look at the background of this episode and his release. The Indian national completed his 3-year sentence for espionage and other crimes on Saturday. Mr. Ansari had illegally entered Pakistan on fake documents. He was also involved in anti-state crimes and forgery. Ansari was taken into custody by the police and intelligence bureau officials in Kohat in November 2012 and was later court-martialed by a military tribunal. He was convicted and sentenced to 3 years in jail in December 2015. Now, his release is another step of Pakistan towards mending the bilateral relations with India. Last month, Pakistan opened Kartarpur corridor for Sikh pilgrims that got hailed throughout the world. So far, Pakistan's gestures are going unanswered by the Indian ranks. Is there any hope for normalization of relations between India and Pakistan? How are Pakistani gestures being received in India? To discuss this, we are now joined by Ms. Mandara Nair. She is a writer, she is a journalist, she works with The Week magazine in India. Ms. Nair, thank you so much for your time. It's a pleasure having you on the show. Let's just talk about release of Hamid Ansari first. How is this gesture being received in India right now?
I think if you see the pictures on the screen of him coming back home, I think it's been very well received. The Foreign Office has said it's a great gesture. They're hoping that this is now going to open up and there is going to be, the Joint Judicial Committee will be formed. People will, this will lead to more exchanges of prisoners. So I think it has been really well received. He'd been in a Pakistani jail for 6 years. It was a case of straying, really, or for love, as it were. So I think it has been really well received.
Right, but Ms. Nair, you talked about people, but these gestures, last month we have seen Kartarpur corridor episode as well. How are these gestures being received by the Indian leadership, the politicians?
Well, I think if you hear, in the sense, if you hear the last speech that Modi does make, that Prime Minister Modi made on Kartarpur, he said, let this be a bridge to connect people. He talked about the Berlin Wall falling. So I think that message of Kartarpur, if you just see what the Prime Minister has said, has been received very well. I think that is wonderful. The fact that the people-to-people contact, I think if you read the Punjab government has passed a resolution for some sort of handover of land too. So I think there is, the message has been received in the proper light that it is. There has been, of course, and the Hamid Ansari switch has also been a good sign.
And there is a feeling in Pakistan that these gestures are not being reciprocated. They are going unanswered by India. Do you see any truth to that?
By what would you mean by reciprocated? I think that there is an opportunity which has been received well on both sides. Reciprocation depends on various things. I don't think there has been a rebuff of anything. I think the issues, however, has been talks, whether talks will happen or not. And I think the government seems to be firm on the fact that there has to be, the talks so far are not happening. But apart from that, I think that the gesture, I mean, post the talks, if you look at it, even the Qatar, the fact that two Indian ministers went across, there was that gesture too. So I think that as it looks, from a point of view from when the talks were completely cancelled to now, there is somewhat of a thawing and a forward movement. And I think we should really concentrate on that.
Right, and Ms. Nair, you spoke about resumption of dialogue. Now, dialogue has been very critical from Pakistani point of view, and Pakistan has time and again insisted that this dialogue must resume. But now, I know that elections are coming up in India. Do you think that there is any hope for resumption of these talks between India and Pakistan before or after the elections?
Well, I think that at the moment, elections, of course, is going to take over political discourse. And, our Indian elections are really, really big. So I'm not sure. I think the government really has gone on to election mode. So I'm not sure how much of it at this point of time. I think elections will be declared somewhat around February, March. So, I don't know about talks immediately at the moment, I think. But yes, of course, post the new government, of course, there would be hopefully forward movement. Let's see what the new government brings. So far, I think this government has talked about talks and terror. That is a firm point. There's also been, remember, it's also the 10th anniversary of the 2611 issue, which of course is a big concern for India. So I think there is a lot of that. If you hear there was, even today there was a news item about Hafiz Saeed and a Pakistani minister sort of defending him. So there is also mixed signals on that side too. So I think that talks at the moment are not happening, or I don't think they're imminent.
And what about the general sense for relations with Pakistan? Do you think that is changing? But because in past 4 or 5 years, we have seen that there has been a complete stalemate, and there has been public pressure on Indian government as well to do that. Do you think that mood will change in coming days as far as relations with Pakistan are concerned?
I think that every anniversary of 2611 is a big issue, and I think that is one popular sentiment. Having said that, I don't know about the Indian voter. We don't know how the elections are going to play out. Nobody ever knows. I mean, pollsters have been proven wrong. They've been proven right. I don't know. I couldn't hazard a guess about what the kind of government is going to come into place. Having said that, I think that, there has, even if during the Kartarpur corridor, the Prime Minister, Imran Khan, talked about moving forward. I think there is, and he did talk about people-to-people contact. I think if you look at it, you can't look at India as a monolith. There are various parts of this. If you look at Punjab, there is certainly a mood for better relations. There has been the Pakistan team was here for hockey. There has been movement in terms of people-to-people from a point of view when there wasn't anything for a very long time. I think all these things add to hope. What governments will do, how the mood will change, I mean, those are big questions. We really don't know. And with India and Pakistan, these questions become larger, and, small things. I mean, at some point of time, Kartarpur didn't seem possible too. So I don't know whether we can hazard a guess for a long-term vision for India and Pakistan. But I think today is a really good day to celebrate. It's a really wonderful moment. And if you hear what Fawzia Ansari said about India and Pakistan, and when she talked about the lawyer, and she said that what she did for Hamid, even she wouldn't be able to do as a mother. I think this is a really wonderful day. I think we should hang on to that. I think today is a good day for India-Pakistan relations.
And what about these human stories, all these human stories, these prisoners, fishermen, and other issues that are between India and Pakistan? Do you think that there is a realization on both sides, India and Pakistan, that these issues need to be detached from politics between the two countries?
I think there's a realization within people that people make governments and not the other way around. I mean, if you look at it if you just look at it as this story itself, it would have been impossible if it wasn't for people involved on both sides and supportive of media too on both sides. You talk about India and Pakistan media, you also talk about a lot of rhetoric, between both sides. But this is a story that everybody sort of talked about. It was raised during the Indian media's interaction with with Prime Minister Imran Khan. It was raised during the time when we met the foreign minister, and that it happened. So I think that there is a realization that there is a constituency for peace on both sides, and I think that governments are realizing that. I think that if you look at just what Prime Minister Modi said, he talked about the Berlin Wall. He said governments. He said that what happens with the army and the government is different, but he hoped that the corridor will be a bridge between the people. And I think that there is a realization that there is that peace. I mean, at least for people, there is a people-to-people contact, which is really huge. And I think that's a constituency that we have to concentrate on. Whether governments realize, I don't know.
And Ms. Nayak, what we have seen that even these peace gestures, they are being followed by controversies. Like we saw in the case of Kartarpur, I'm not sure what's happening with Hamid Ansari's release as well. But there is a sense that these peace gestures are also getting controversial. How do you see that?
I don't know. Would you think that the controversy, I mean, I don't think the controversy of what happened or any of the politics that, domestic politics that played around any of the Kartarpur thing has actually impacted the initiative itself. If you look at it, and Qatar Raj is being talked about opening up. Hamid Ansari, when he walks across, he kissed the ground, he hugged his mother. She talked about humanity on both sides. I think that really is the story. I really think that if there are innocent people who get trapped in the quagmire of politics, when fishermen, people like Hamid Ansari who sort of get trapped in politics, but there also are people who on both sides who fight for them. So I think that's what it is. I think that controversies will come and go, and controversies exist here and in Pakistan, but I don't think that stalls what this really is, and hopefully it'll be a movement.
And you have mentioned this phrase people-to-people contact many times in your conversation. Do you think that there is scope for that? Because what we have seen that there has been a lot of visa problems especially for Pakistanis who come to India. Do you think that this issue will get sorted out, and in coming days there will be more people-to-people contact between the two countries?
I do hope there is that. I think even people who are cynical, even if you didn't believe that people to people, if you look at it, there is always people who talk about the Mombatti mafia on both sides, the people who come and light candles on both sides and Wagah. But even if you're a cynic, how can you ignore that these people have power at the moment? I mean, that these people could make, that they've been able to move this forward. Wouldn't you think that this is a people-to-people government? Wouldn't you think this is a win too? I mean, how can you ignore that? If you went to Kartarpur and you saw the emotion at that point of time, you saw people talking about how important this is and how this is a culture, and I think that was moving. And just as a journalist, to just document that, and you have people standing there weeping who've never been able to for 70 years, they haven't gone across to pay homage to in Kartarpur. I mean, that's a powerful movement. It's movement. It's so even on a day where you can look at cynicism and you can say whether it moves or not, but today is a really good day. So I don't know whether, we hope that of course visa regimes will improve. This is a good step forward. Let's hope that it continues to move forward. We can only hope.
Thank you, Ms. Mandara Nair. That was Mandara Nair, an Indian journalist, talking to us about Pakistan and India relations and people-to-people contact. Let's just see if that happens between the two countries. Well, this is it from the show tonight. Thank you for watching Center Stage with Rehman Azhar. Have a good night.